Well, alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome to the Hanoi Philosophy Forum. I see a lot of new faces tonight. Thank you all so very much for coming. Could I get a round of applause for Nache on guitar, please? So, hello everybody. Did everybody get a chance to say hi to True, who was handing out some pieces of paper, some crayons, some pens for our haiku contest? Did everybody get a chance to do that? The prompt was why you love animals, or why you love eating animals. I think that throughout the night we're going to hear from both vegans and vegetarians and pescatarians and meat eaters. This is just kind of a nice way to see where everybody's at. Hello. Hello. Cool, guys. Could I get a quick show of hands? Whose first time is it here to the Philosophy Forum? Whoa! Amazing. Cool, guys. Hello. Well, thank you all very, very much for being here. Yeah, great. Great. Okay. So, as I hope that you all know, tonight we're going to be discussing vegan philosophy. Is everybody in the right room? Everybody came to the right spot? Okay. Good. All right. Thank you. That would be a little confusing. Good, guys. So, could I maybe just get a show of hands where we're starting out at? Could I see who here does not identify as a vegan or a vegetarian or a pescatarian? You just kind of eat whatever you want. Could I get a show of hands? That's about, wow, that's about 2/3 of the audience. Holy smokes. That's cool. Okay, good guys. Good. And then could I get a show of hands from people who consider themselves to be either pescatarian or vegetarian or vegan? Show of hands from those people. Definitely in the minority. Wow, okay. So about 1/4 of the audience tonight. That's so cool. That's actually really good. So that means that tonight's debates are going to be really powerful. So for anybody who's new here, the way that the Hanoi Philosophy Forum works, any questions about these things? All good. Okay, yes, please. Between meat eaters and vegetarians. So it actually looked pretty balanced already. It seemed like throughout the group. Could I, maybe one more time, as a few more people have come in, could I just get a hands raised from any vegans or vegetarians in the audience? Yes, that seems like they're spread out pretty far and wide. That's nice. Maybe if there's a clump, it seems like back here there might not be many vegetarians or any vegetarians. Okay, great, thank you. And then, so I think that it does look pretty balanced to me. If throughout the night you'd like to change seats, hey Aaron, good to see you. If throughout the night you'd like to change seats, move to somewhere else that you feel like you might have a little bit more of a balance in the conversation, you're certainly invited to do that. Okay, does that work? Cool, thank you. Anything else? Okay, well then, in that case, guys, I would like to introduce you into the wacky and wild world of vegan philosophy. Dun dun dun! Okay. Thank you, guys. So, I really love the debate about veganism because, one, I think that it's a really important conversation to have for environmental reasons, for health reasons, for animal welfare reasons. All these are extremely important. But two, one that I think isn't maybe seen so clearly on the surface, the vegan debate, it tangentially refers to many really, really interesting philosophical questions. So when talking about veganism, you automatically have to move into this place of talking about morality, talking about right and wrong, talking about ethics, talking about a hierarchy of the species, talking about consciousness and sentience, and hopefully it's all of these things that the conversation is going to be led to tonight. So if in your small groups, when we have these conversations, if there are tangents, if you begin to talk about something that's maybe not really germane to the question, it's okay. I say embrace it. Let the conversation flow wherever the conversation flows. Probably it'll wind back around like a boomerang. That sound good? Cool. Okay. So I'll show you what we have in store for you tonight. There's a lot that we have for you tonight, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get to it all, to be honest. We're going to try. We're going to do our best. We're going to try. So let's see. First, we have the haiku and drawing contest as everybody was coming in. If anybody just got here, if you want to see Truett, here, and maybe Truett will come around to you, hand out some papers and some pens and some crayons. You can raise your hand if you'd like any. And around the middle of the night, we're going to be collecting these, and then near the end of the night, we're actually going to be releasing who the winners of this contest are, and whoever wins gets a free drink on us. And the prompt for that is, why do you love animals? Or, why do you love eating animals? Cool. After that, we're going to be having a talk on fundamentally what veganism is, what vegan activists believe, and what they're trying to accomplish. After that, we'll be looking at some ancient philosophers and what their thoughts were on veganism. After that, we'll look at modern philosophers on veganism. There are actually several. And then we're going to have a talk on the environmental impact, a talk on animal welfare, we're going to have some poetry from Otto Nomous. Is Otto here? Otto, could you stand up for us real quick? Awesome. Thank you so much. So Otto will be performing some poetry for us tonight, which I'm really excited for. Thank you so much for preparing that for us, Otto. That's great. After that, we'll have a quick talk on the health benefits of a vegan diet and some of the health consequences, maybe, of a vegan diet. And we'll be having a vegan food sampling from Ha. Ha, could you raise your hand for us too? Thank you so much. Ha was up until, 4:30 last night preparing this food for us tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. As I said, Puku has a wonderful selection of vegetarian dishes. We don't have enough free food to fill up your bellies, but at least to give you a little bit of a sampling. We can get some of that. Number 10, it's left blank. I'm not too sure why, but we'll see what happens when we get to number 10. Cool? All right, guys. All right. So that's what we have on the docket. I'm going to try my best to get through everything, but not at the expense of cutting off any conversations. Cool? Before rolling into this all, I really do want to let you know about my own personal bias here. So I do want to tell you that I am a vegan. I've been vegan since, vegetarian or vegan since 2010. And I've been a vegetarian or a vegan for animal welfare reasons, for environmental reasons, and for health reasons. So I'm going to try my best tonight to allow for a fair debate, to allow for an unbiased debate. But of course, I'm speaking through the lens of a vegan here. So apologies in advance about that, okay? But please challenge me. I really want to argue with you guys about this stuff. Me personally, I think that if I were stranded on an island and it were just me and a chicken, I probably would eat the chicken, I think. I don't know for sure, but I imagine that that's the case. In the United States, I was a vegan activist for about a year, so I've had these conversations quite a lot. I did find maybe that some of the more militant activism didn't really seem to be very good for animals. It seemed like it actually pushed a lot of people away who maybe otherwise, would have converted to vegetarianism, or at least just reducing their meat intake. So I think that these kinds of conversations that are more of debates, more open to many different opinions, is really the better way to go about it. Okay, so first of all, what is veganism? Could I just hear a quick definition from anybody in the audience? What is veganism? No meat or dairy. Okay, cool. And no animal products. Okay, so what is an animal product that is not meat or dairy? Ah, okay, right, okay. So no honey, no meat, no dairy. Yeah, Sophie? Okay, yeah, so you talked about wearing them. So a lot of vegans would also not be wearing fur or wearing any animal products on their body. But you also talked about use there. So if you think about, ox pulling a plow or some horses pulling a carriage, this is all considered not a part of the vegan ideal. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, great. Okay, good. Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. So this definition of veganism comes from the Vegan Society. You can find a lot of their work online. If you have questions, they're a really great resource for understanding veganism and what people are trying to do through the vegan activism movement. So first of all, veganism is both a philosophy and a way of living. It's a way of thinking about the world and a way of acting in the world. And like Sophie said, it seeks to exclude all forms of animal exploitation and cruelty. So it's not just a dietary style. But it's an entire lifestyle trying to minimize the use of animals for any kind of human gain. This does regard to food, it regards to clothing, it regards to products. So you might know that a lot of makeups and things are first tested on animals. So vegans would not, or I should say most vegans, would try to avoid using any of these cosmetics that were tested on animals. And then basically any other purpose that an animal might be used for, a vegan tries to avoid. Yeah? Does that make sense to everybody?
I got a question.
Yeah, Aaron.
So it seems like the word veganism, the root is vegetable, maybe. Does it mean like, does the word, you know what the word itself?
I have no idea. Yeah, that would have been great to look into. I like looking into etymology. I haven't done it for the word veganism. Yeah.
I know about that. So the word vegan actually come from vegetarian. So like basically in the history it was first the term vegetarian in the history was the meaning was what it's vegan right now, but then there was like some kind of conflict, and it became what we know now, which is like including dairy products and so. So then in the 50s there was this guy, his name is Watson, I think, and he was the guy who organized the vegan society in England also, and he came up with this term. So like basically vegan, it reflects the idea of that vegetarian is just the beginning, like it's the way that you, so like you begin with vegetarian and you end up being vegan, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you, Aaron. In my activism days, I actually found that there was a lot more, kind of comically, a lot more animosity that was cast from vegans towards vegetarians than was cast towards meat eaters a lot of the time. Thinking like, come on, man, you're so close. You're so close. You know. Okay, so also vegans tend to promote animal-free alternatives. They also philosophically reject the commodity status of animals. So many people look at animals as being something that exist for human gain or human profit. And a vegan says, no, they are their own life form. As much as we consider another human being to have its own individuality, to have its own wants and its own needs and its own autonomy, a vegan would say that all animals, all non-human animals included, have their own autonomy, have their own wants, have their own needs, and deserve to be able to pursue those wants and those needs. Yeah, true it. So I think that vegans have a really complicated relationship with pets, actually. Are there any vegans that have pets in here? There are no vegans that have pets in here. Okay. Yeah, so I think especially when talking about autonomy, it becomes really difficult. Now, there's an argument with pets that would say that the quality of life for a pet increases because it's domesticated. So being inside the house, it ensures that the animal is going to be getting food. If it gets sick, then the caretakers of the animal are going to be bringing it to the doctor. But also, you put a fence around your yard to ensure that your dog doesn't run away, and the fence is very much like a prison. Pet owners might say that it's a prison that actually benefits the animal. Yeah, so it's very complicated, and one that I'm sure that we'll be getting into a little later on in the small groups tonight. Yeah, thank you, Tro. Anything else? Okay, awesome. So an important note for all of this is the caveat to all of this, which is as far as possible and practical. And what is possible and what is practical is defined by each individual. It's defined by each individual. So it's what you find to be possible and what you find to be practical. Has anybody seen the article trending recently around the internet on how avocados are not vegan? Has anybody seen that? Yeah, okay. So does anyone know why, what the argument is for why avocados are not vegan? Yeah, Giorgia?
I'm pretty sure that's because they can't be made without bees, and the way they keep the bees is like all in together very tightly in one truck, and apparently it's not an ethical way of keeping bees.
Yeah, that's right. So it's certainly not that they can't be made without bees, right? Avocados have been around for thousands of years without bees, but the way that most are being produced today do involve bees as a kind of labor force right now. And there are lots of other foods that are also under attack and called not vegan for the same reason. Exactly where a vegan might draw the line is a very interesting part of this debate, and one that we'll explicitly be talking about tonight. So you might know the Jains, followers of Jainism. They'll sweep the floor in front of them to make sure that they never accidentally step on a bug. And they also often wear a face mask in front of them to make sure that they never accidentally swallow a bug, right? To ensure that they don't ever harm any animal. Most vegans that I know, they don't go this far. We ride motorbikes, and I'm sure that we accidentally crush things or accidentally squash things against our windshields. And where we draw this line feels to be maybe arbitrary, or maybe there's some real thought behind it, and hopefully we'll be able to get into that a little bit more tonight. Cool. Any other thoughts on this one, guys? Cool. Okay. So I'd like to just be clear about some terminology before moving forward to make sure that we're all on the same page. So first of all, yes, a vegan is no meat, no fish, no eggs, no dairy, maybe honey, actually. So this one is sometimes debated. There are some vegans that still call themselves vegan that do still eat honey. Now, vegetarian would mean no meat, no fish, but they do eat eggs, they eat dairy, they eat honey. And there's a big spectrum, you know. Some people might eat eggs but no dairy, maybe eat dairy but no eggs, right? Maybe eat honey but no dairy, no eggs, you know, it's all in a bit of a mix, but that's vegetarianism. Also, pescatarianism means that you don't eat any land meat. You don't eat cows or chickens, but you do eat fish. They tend to believe that there's a difference in the consciousness, the sentience of fish as opposed to other creatures. Their ability to feel pain, their ability to suffer is just different than other animals. How exactly they get to that one is kind of interesting. There's reducitarianism, which is actually very new, founded by a guy called Brian Cateman just a few years ago. Reducitarianism claims that veganism, hardline veganism, militant veganism, is actually bad for animals because it discourages anyone who might otherwise want to adopt a maybe vegan lifestyle or vegetarian lifestyle or a lifestyle where you're just consuming less meat. It puts everybody into two camps of the evil meat eaters and the righteous vegans. And if people think, oh, well, I can't be totally a vegan, I may as well just eat all the meat that I want to in the world. So instead, reducitarianism says, you can eat meat, but let's all agree that we think that suffering is bad. So let's try to just reduce the amount of meat that we eat. We can all get behind that one, right? There are abolitionist vegans, and the abolitionism here, refers specifically to wanting the freedom of all animals. So these are people who are against owning pets, like Truett was talking about, people who are against using any animal labor on any farm. And another term is speciesism, which, like racism or sexism, it's a belief that implies that one being is better or inferior to another being strictly because of the species that they're born into. I think that most of us feel this maybe a bit innately, that human beings for some reason are better than every other creature that's out there. Through conversations, it seems like most of us kind of feel that internally unless we explore it a little bit more. But that's a part of speciesism. Any questions about these terms? Yeah, please.
No, I just have another term that's used quite often in Sweden. Vegan.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, would you like to define freegan for us?
Yeah, freegan is that you only eat non-vegan stuff when you dumpster dive it. So if you find meat or eggs in a dumpster, like the supermarket dumpster, you can eat that and still be vegan.
Yeah, great. So, and not only dumpster diving, but a lot of freegans also say that if you are invited over to a friend's house and the friend has cooked a meal specifically for you, that you're not just going to say no to this meal, even if it includes meat, maybe because the food has already been prepared. If you don't eat it, it's just going to be thrown away. What's the real difference here? Some vegans are very against freeganism. Some of them are more accepting of it. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, any more that you'd like to throw in there? Yeah, please.
I have since the vegan Sunday, I have bacon and milk and cheese in my fridge, and I've decided what to do.
Yeah,
So I give it to someone who I've shown them.
yeah. So he said he's been a vegan since Sunday, and he still has some bacon and eggs, you said, in your fridge? Bacon and eggs in his fridge, and he's not sure how to handle it, you know? Not sure what to do. Cool. Hopefully, throughout our discussions, maybe you can hijack one of the conversations and see if we can get an answer to that. Awesome. Great. Cool, guys. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit, and I'm going to roll through these pretty quickly, actually, but it's nice to know. I think a lot of us have this assumption that the vegan movement is something that's relatively new, and that these are questions that are only coming about right now. Maybe we've reached a level of economic prosperity, we've reached a level of, consciousness or something where we can begin caring about other creatures other than just humans. But these are questions that philosophers have actually been talking about for a very long time. So we'll start with Pythagoras. He invented the Pythagorean theorem. If you see this big triangle on top, that's him. That's Pythagoras. Cool, guys. So Pythagoras said, for as long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Indeed, he who sows the seeds of murder and pain cannot reap joy and love. So do you think that he was a meat eater or a vegetarian? That was kind of a joke. Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, maybe a freegan. He only ate triangular foods. Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, around the 6th century BCE, he said, "To become a vegetarian is to step into the stream which leads to nirvana." Now, of course, whether or not there was actually a man called Buddha who said this thing is up for debate, but at least it's a part of the Buddhist philosophy to be vegetarian or vegan, to try to minimize the suffering that we impose on other beings. Socrates, and this is quoted from Plato's Republic, there's a dialogue here, but in there Socrates says, "Would this habit of eating animals not require that we slaughter animals that we knew as individuals, and in whose eyes we could gaze and see ourselves reflected only a few hours before our meal?" There's kind of a back and forth that goes on about veganism here between Socrates and another character in the Republic, and eventually they say that having a fruitful society just isn't possible with eating meat. I can show you that whole dialogue a little later on if we have time. Hippocrates says, "The soul is the same in all living creatures, although the body of each is different." Now, many people who meditate for a very long time, 2 weeks ago we had a whole forum dedicated to yogic philosophy, but for anyone who meditates for a very long time, it seems that this kind of compassion and this oneness begins to spring up. And through my own experience, it was definitely through the practices of meditation that I began to feel much more connected with basically every person, and certainly with every other animal, feeling like there isn't really this disconnection, feeling like we aren't inherently separate creatures. And it seems like Hippocrates was also on that same train. Plato, I think this is the last one that we have, he says, "The gods created certain kinds of beings to replenish our bodies. They are the trees and the plants and the seeds." So I didn't find much from ancient philosophers who actually wrote being pro-carnivore, pro-meat eating. Most of them, when they wrote, they actually wrote in favor of either a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle. Not to say that one is better than the other, I guess. It's just interesting. So guys, now we get to move into our first small group discussion for the night. A small group discussion probably works best somewhere between 5 and 6 people. We do not want to get bigger than 6 people. If you really need to, you can. I trust you. But if it's more than 6, it's hard to get your voice in there, and I really want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to talk. So we can break up into small groups here. Find your 4 or 5 or 6 people that are around you. Say hi, tell them your name, and we'll open up the whole night with just this question: are you a vegan or a vegetarian, and why are you? Or are you a meat eater? And if you're not a vegetarian, why? Why not? Okay? So we'll come back in just about 10 minutes after we got that down, and we'll move into our next little lecture here. Thanks, guys. Well, alrighty, folks. Hello, and welcome back. Hello, 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 hello. I'm sorry to cut up the conversation if you're kind of in the middle of things. So maybe I could hear something, 1 or 2. Andrew. Maybe I could hear 1 or 2 things from the audience. From anybody who is let's start out with somebody who is a meat eater. Why do you eat meat? Why have you not made the decision to switch? Let's turn this down. Why have you not made the decision to start adopting a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle? Anybody? Nobody? Nobody? Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, so your question is, why wouldn't I switch from a meat eater to become a vegetarian or a vegan? Okay. Actually, I don't really like meat. I wouldn't eat meat if I'm alone. I also don't believe that meat is healthier based on the way that we are raising meat now. I mean, however, for me, being a human is more about socialize, about being part of a community. So when I'm in Vietnam, in Hanoi, and everybody around me are basically meat eater, I don't feel very comfortable to be a vegan. Again, I would never eat meat or dairy or eggs or cheese or honey if I'm alone.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so definitely in the couple of small groups conversations that I was able to attend, it seemed like the custom of eating meat, especially depending on the country where you're from, it seems like meat eating is such a big part of the culture that it's a little scary to give up. Okay, so that's one, so thank you very much. Would any vegans or vegetarians like to talk about their primary drive for becoming a vegan or vegetarian, or maybe being it now, or yeah, whatever you want to say. Alex, it seemed like you wanted to talk.
I just thought of like giving you a little counter argument, because you said that it's like a social pressure and it's like tradition, but you know, like traditions aren't inherently good. There's been a lot of traditions that were actually horrible, like owning slaves was a tradition. Like everyone was doing it, and people who were like, who thought of themselves as good people had slaves because like that was just normal. Just like eating meat is normal nowadays. And you just have to be aware that every individual has like a social power. You know, obviously like a group of people has a bigger social power than an individual, but every individual has that, and by exerting that power, by talking about these things, you can make an impact, and if you make an impact on a big scale, then like it gets bigger and bigger, and so I think I don't know where it's going.
Great, awesome, yeah, awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, and you brought up the slave trade, and of course, there were people who, during the slave trade days, wanted to speak up and say, "Hey, guys, I think that what we're doing here is wrong." And of course, these people were kind of ostracized by their community, or they were told that they were wrong. They were really in the minority on this, right? But now we look back at history; everybody else was wrong, you know. So it's interesting to imagine where some of us might be. There have been some films that actually imagine a future of a totally vegan world, and the way that we look back on us today as being kind of brutes for eating meats. All right, guys. Well, cool. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Oh, great. Who invited the herbivore? I brought hummus. Oh, no. All right, guys. So I'd like to talk a little bit about modern philosophers. And I think that their arguments here about veganism are quite a bit more thought out, at least, than what we have the records of from some of these ancients. So the first guy I'd like to talk about is Peter Singer. Does anybody know Peter Singer in here? Utilitarian philosopher. Awesome. Yeah, he was a big player in the Give What You Can movement and in effective altruism. So Peter Singer, he's a moral philosopher. He's also a professor of bioethics. He has some TED Talks. He has some really great books, actually. I'd suggest checking out all of his work. He's at Princeton University, and he's a utilitarian and a protectionist. He says there's no moral or logical justification for failing to count animal suffering as a consequence when making decisions. Killing animals should be rejected unless necessary for survival. And he recognizes that equal treatment cannot be based on equality. So I'll unpack this one for you a little bit here. He says, oftentimes when we get into a debate about veganism, we say, well, animals aren't as smart as human beings. Therefore, we don't need to care about their life as much as we care about the lives of human beings. And he says, well, wait a minute. If we start basing equal treatment on equality, then that means that if we were to prove that, so he uses the example, he says, maybe one day we prove that women are always biologically weaker than men. Now, is this an example that women should not be treated equally to men? Of course not. Of course not, right? Or if you look at someone who's in a coma who doesn't have any brain activity, does this mean that we're allowed to suspend the rights of this human just because they're in a coma? Because it seems like that's the logic that follows from assuming that just because an animal might have less intelligence than a human being, that they should be treated any differently. Questions about this one? Yes, please.
Does he eat plants?
He does eat plants, yes.
How does he justify that?
I don't think that he's been challenged on eating plants. Do you challenge him on eating plants?
I would if I knew it, yeah.
Do you eat plants? Okay, well, I'm not sure the arguments that are made against eating plants. Personally, I've definitely heard some people talking about how we've proven that plants feel when they're being cut down. Some people even say that they scream when plants are being cut. Whether or not the plant suffers, I think, is a much trickier question. Yeah, and definitely one that we can explore a little later on tonight. Cool. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Gary Francois. Gary Francois is a rights theorist and philosophy scholar at Rutgers University. He's also an abolitionist. So again, this means not only does he not believe in eating animals, but he thinks we should not be keeping animals as our pets or keeping animals on our farms or for any kind of labor. He says all sentient beings should have the right not to be treated as property. Adopting veganism must be the baseline for anyone who believes that non-humans have intrinsic moral values. I think that argument is actually pretty square there. I think he just makes a lot of sense in his own words. Cool. Tom Regan. Tom Regan is a professor of philosophy at North Carolina State University. And he presents an argument which he calls subjects of a life. This is the subjects of a life argument. He says, animals possess value as subjects of a life because they have beliefs, desires, memory, and the ability to initiate action in pursuit of goals. And he says any creature that possesses these things that they should be treated equally. So if we were to look at something like a flower or a blade of grass, it'd be very difficult to assume that they have beliefs, that they have memories, and that they have the ability to initiate action in pursuit of a goal. So I think that a big part of the debate around veganism has to do with exactly where we draw the line. Do we not kill mosquitoes? Do we not kill bugs? Where do we draw the line? Where do we say what is sentient and what is not? And what he's trying to propose here is a line. If they meet this definition of being subjects of a life, then they deserve not to be killed. Cool. Any questions about this one? Yeah, please. Yeah, Otto.
There's a thing called the mycelium network, and it sort of suggests that there's plants, trees, and lots of different plants have a network which connects all of them together for proven specific goals of different plants to achieve different means. And so, in a way, to me, that proves that plants, just like animals, do have specific goals and are just as sentient.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And actually, even just looking at an individual creature, so like a blade of grass, let's say, certainly is, or a tree, certainly is growing towards the sun. It seems like it desires the sun. It desires those nutrients, and it's working in a way to ensure that it's able to get those nutrients. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thank you, Otto. Thank you. Hey, Chung, could you just keep this door shut for me, please?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Can I put on the phone?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, please. Yeah. Is anyone familiar with Melanie Joy, by chance? Yeah? Big smiles at Melanie Joy. That's nice. Ooh, cool. What festival? Okay, great. Melanie Joy is she got her doctorate from Harvard University in I think clinical psychology, maybe just the study of psychology, and she wrote her dissertation, her doctoral dissertation, on what she calls carnism, which I'll get to talk a little bit about right now, right? So we have vegetarianism, and she says that in the same way that there's a set of beliefs and instructions of living that are given to a vegan or given to a vegetarian, it's important that we recognize that these same societal structures are put in place, these same pressures, these same life choices around people who are deciding to eat meat. She wrote a book in 2009 called Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. Why it is that we have these strange categories in our minds about ways to treat particular animals. And she called this the meat paradox. So she said we have inconsistency in our attitudes towards certain animals. I'm not sure if anybody in here has seen, but did you see that just a few days ago, Hanoi actually banned the sale of all dog meat? Did anybody see that? Yeah. They banned it, yeah, the sale of... You know what? I know that I run on mostly rumors here, actually. So this is based on things that I've read online and also conversations that I've had with people. Yeah. So the reason why they've either banned it or suggested that people stop consuming it is not for any kind of moral reason, but it's actually because there's a rabies outbreak in dogs right now, and they don't want the rabies to be transmitted through the consumption of meat. Yeah. Right. But are there any meat eaters in here? Somebody who might eat a cow or a chicken who maybe would choose not to eat a dog. Do we have anyone in the audience like that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, awesome, yeah. So it's interesting to begin to explore why we have this different relationship with dogs than what we have with cows. Why is it that we consider eating a cow to be somehow wrong? Eating a dog to be somehow wrong, but we accept the idea that people are eating cows or eating chickens. Yeah, so this is what she calls the meat paradox. She also recognizes that there's quite a lot of cognitive dissonance in the way that we treat animals. So cognitive dissonance is when we are holding on simultaneously... Uh-oh. I'm not sure what just happened. I think it's all right. Give me just 1 second, guys. Sorry. If we could get Chung in here. Alrighty, guys. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Hey, Andrew. Are we still okay? Okay, cool. Great. Cool. So she recognizes and wrote her dissertation on what she calls carnism. She says that humans have been conditioned to believe that humans evolved to eat meat Do most of us agree with that? Do most of us believe that humans evolved to eat meat? Okay. And that it's expected of human beings to eat meat. And that they need it to survive or to be strong. So she's recognizing all of the different societal forces, the different advertising campaigns that exist on television, the different marketing that's put into movies and in stories that convince us, intentionally or otherwise, that we actually need meat in order to survive or to be strong. It's my favorite little joke. One friend says to another friend, "Hey man, I'm going to McDonald's." The second friend says, "All right." First friend says, "I'm going out for a cigarette." Second friend says, "Okay." First friend says, "I'm going out to get drunk." Second friend says, "Okay." First friend says, "I'm going vegan." Second friend says, "Yeah, but what about protein and calcium? And I heard about this vegan couple who had a baby and that they died. So basically, if you go vegan, you kill babies." I'm glad that more people got that than just the vegans. That's good. Okay. I have one more vegan joke for you that I'll share. Okay, so it's how many meat eaters does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. Meat eaters don't need light bulbs because our ancestors never needed light bulbs, and lions don't need light bulbs. Okay, thanks. I'm done. We're finished. We're finished with that. Thanks, guys. Okay, so could I hear from anybody in the audience? What do you think is the difference between eating a cow, eating a dog, and eating a human? Why do we think about these three things in such fundamentally different ways? Anybody? Yeah, please. Can we pass the microphone back to you?
I think for about 10,000 years, we've been breeding dogs to be as human as possible. The dogs that weren't human enough, we probably did eat those. So dogs have gradually been domestically bred to be some of the most human animals in a lot of ways. The way they respond to our emotions is different from any other animal. Whereas pigs and cows, we've been breeding for thousands of years to eat. There's been none of this kind of feedback of the ones that are, cutest or most loyal being spared. So I think that's part of the reason when we see a dog, we see a friend, we see like almost a fellow human. But when we see a pig or a cow, we see food.
Thank you. And just that we know, for the sake of the argument, what is your name, first of all? Ryan. And Ryan, are you a vegan or a vegetarian or a meat? You're a vegetarian, okay. Yeah, so I feel like if we were to breed, say, cows to be way more human-like or human-friendly, will we all of a sudden change our relationship with cows and whether or not we want to eat them? And does them being more human-like or friendly, does that actually change the morality of the question? Yeah, Bex.
I was actually saying earlier when we were discussing this, I read this book a while ago that was released in the UK back last Christmas. It's called The Secret Life of Cows, and it's basically this woman owned a dairy farm, and then she decided to make it more remote to her community, and she observed the behavior of the cows, and she described their dynamics and their relationships, and she also talks about like pigs and chickens and all the animals on the farm, and explains kind of from her own perspective, from how she's seen things, how they're all surrounding her and how they all have these different attitudes and these emotions, and now all her family actually are they don't consume any animal products because of that, because they've kind of been observing that and realizing the difference.
Yeah, I know that a lot of vegans have really mixed emotions towards zoos, because in a way it seems like they're like prisons. They're keeping these animals in there against their will. But also zoos are an opportunity for people to get to interact with animals and see what animals are actually like and how awesome and loving and beautiful animals are. And it actually converts a lot of people over to veganism, having these experiences with animals, and even going to a farm and getting just to interact with a cow for a while or with a pig for a while will certainly change their mindset on this. Maybe we'll change. Maybe we'll get to hear one more person, and then they'll move on. Anybody? Yeah, Adim.
This is just a practical thing, not like a moral argument for why they're different. But I think just because most people have had personal relationships with dogs and humans, and most people haven't had any personal relationship with meat animals.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Cool. All right, guys. So we'll probably get a chance to get into that one in our small groups a little bit more. But for now, we're going to move on ahead to some modern arguments against veganism. Yeah. Okay. So they're a little strange. So bear with me here. Okay. So this is Jeff McMahon, and Jeff McMahon is a moral philosopher at Oxford University. He has been a vegetarian for almost 50 years. But his own work in logic and in moral philosophy has convinced him that veganism is not actually the way to go. So he says, might we benefit animals by eating them? Might the life of animals actually be better because we eat them? He says the quality of life of animals might really be increased. And he says, in slaughterhouses and the way that things are done today, certainly maybe not. But if you look back 150 years ago, the life that cows had on these farms arguably was actually better than the life that cows had out in nature. That the life that a dog has in your house is certainly better than the life that a dog has on the street. The life of a pig on a farm up until the moment of its death might actually be far superior to the life that it would have out in nature. It gets fed every single day. If it gets sick, it's given antibiotics, all of these things, right? So he also says the species survival drastically increases when we begin to domesticate these animals. Pigs might just not exist anymore today in the same way that we're killing off all of the rhinos and all of the sea creatures now through overfishing and through hunting and through taking over so many lands. Maybe this would happen to many other species, cows and like pigs. And the reason that there are so many pigs and so many cows is exactly because we eat them. So if you say that quality of life and happiness is the most important thing, maybe eating meat is not the way to go. But if you're really concerned about the long-term survival of a species, it seems like the long-term survival of both cows and chickens and also pigs and any other farm animal actually really increases because of their consumption. Not only take away their ability to evolve, but we're actually doing genetic modification to these animals. So we're taking control of the evolutionary process. Yeah, exactly. I think it would be chaos. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Well, for a little while, I think I want to be as biased on this one as I can, so I'm not going to answer that one directly, but yeah, please.
So, from my understanding, a pig is like a domesticated pig, but if it goes out into the wild, it becomes a boar, and it gets, like the tusks and has to survive out there. So, there is a clear difference between a boar and a pig, and so I'm just wondering how that fits into special survival.
Sure. So we've definitely genetically modified pigs in the same way that there used to be wolves, and then over the course of tens of thousands of years, we've changed the biology of the wolves into dogs to be things that are like much more friendly with us. We've done this with loads of other creatures, and we've done this with pigs as well. On a side note here, maybe a little bit of a tangent, one thing that we're finding right now is that in the 90s in particular, there was a big push to have pork with as little fat content in it as possible. So we continued to only reproduce pigs that had very little fat in them. And one of the consequences of this is that the pigs no longer had natural warmth in the wintertime. So all of the pigs had to be moved inside. And this was all over the world, right? In this big boom in the 90s, particularly in the United States and Europe. And then once they were all moved inside, they didn't have access to getting like the natural diseases and things in the air. So they didn't grow immunities. So they didn't have very developed immune systems. So then when the farmers would go in and would actually interact with these pigs, the diseases that he had on him and the viruses and things would kill all of the pigs. So what you see right now in the world is is not really, that was such a demonic smile there, Homine. That was so good. So what you actually see today are not farms in the traditional way that we actually used to think of farms with the prairie and the big farmhouse and the cows grazing, but they're much more like factories. And the farmers oftentimes have to wear these big rubber suits that are completely disinfected in order to interact with their pigs so that they don't give them these viruses, right? Okay, yeah, so we definitely have changed the pigs from boars quite a lot in their state today. Cool. He also refers to what's called the non-identity problem. Now, this is so strange, and I hope that we can wrap our minds around this. It's a pretty cool idea. So, he says that the animals that we're saving today, if we were to end the meat industry, or let's say 20 years ago, we ended the whole meat industry, well, then the animals that we're saving were never actually born. So there's no animal that we're helping. The animal wouldn't exist today, so we can't help the animal. So are we actually doing good by decreasing the number of animals that are in farms? Right, because the animals wouldn't exist if farming didn't exist. And he says this is true of climate change as well. So he says a lot of the reason why many humans like to go vegan is because you have a much less intense environmental footprint, environmental impact. And he says, but those humans in the future that we're trying to help, if climate change actually happens and everybody dies, then they don't exist. So if these people wouldn't have existed, who exactly are we helping by choosing to be a vegan? These are people that in this imaginary hypothetical world don't really exist. It's a really strange argument. Yeah. So he says that for these two reasons, he has said that logically, veganism is not actually best for animals because the animals that we'd be helping don't really exist, and animal husbandry might actually be good for animals. But he also recognizes that his own intuition, that is, the way that he thinks without using logic, without using rationalism, actually disagrees with his own logical arguments, which is why he continues to be a vegan despite logically believing that veganism is wrong, which is kind of the exact opposite, I think, of most of us who maybe logically believe that veganism is correct, but intuitively want to continue eating animals. Yeah. Very strange man. Don't become a philosopher. This is R.G. Fry, and he's a professor of philosophy at Bowling Green State University, and he's a preference utilitarian. So utilitarianism is a branch of philosophy that focuses on the most effective ways of getting what it is that you want, and or really getting to the goal. And the goal for most utilitarians is maximization of happiness and decreasing suffering. Yeah. Now, preference utilitarians, they say maybe the goal isn't really happiness, maybe the goal isn't really reducing suffering. Let's just say whatever the individual desires, whatever you prefer, that's what we're aiming towards. We want to ensure that we can maximize you getting whatever it is that you want. Whether that's happiness or pain or suffering, whatever you want, you can get it, and we're going to find the most effective ways to get there. Now, he wrote a book in 1980 called Interests and Rights, and he said that animals actually have no interests. And we're going to follow this kind of logical argument here quickly. So he said interests are dependent on desire, and desire is dependent on belief. And animals have no belief, because beliefs require second-order beliefs, and second-order beliefs require language. I'm going to break this one down for you. I know it's a lot. This is his logical philosophical argument. Okay, so he says, if as a preference utilitarian, we're trying to maximize anyone or anything getting what it is that they want, then we first must have a creature that wants things. And he's saying, no, animals don't actually want things. Because in order to want things, you have to have some kind of belief structure. A belief structure saying that this is good and this is bad. You must be able to believe things. But you can't believe things unless you have what he calls a second-order belief. Oh, I see so many rolling eyes right now. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. Let's get through this one. Bear with me for a minute. Okay, so he says that in order to have a belief, you have to have what he calls a second-order belief. A second order belief is a belief about your belief. So I'll break this one down with a quote that he has. So he says, if someone were to say, the cat believes that the door is locked, then that person is holding, as I see it, the belief that the cat holds the declarative sentence in their head, the door is locked, to be true. And I can see no reason whatsoever for crediting the cat or any other creature which lacks language, including human infants, with entertaining declarative sentences. He's saying in order to have beliefs, you must be able to have a belief about that belief. Infants don't have it, nor do animals. Yeah, Adine. Adine asked, is it okay to human infants if you follow this line? So I don't want to speak for R.G. Fry, of course, but I think that is the logical conclusion here. Yeah, of course, yeah, that it's okay to eat infants. Yeah, please.
I think that there's something wrong here, because even what he argues is right. If we say that a person a person only have a desire, if he must have a belief, but even an infant, they have a desire for hunger, even before he has any beliefs. So I do think that a belief is sort of an illusion that people think that we have to have, but we forget that we have a more of a universal intelligence, which is consciousness, that we can actually explain, but it drives us more on the way that we act as a human.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. So this is something that's definitely up for debate. The argument that R.G. Fry is making here actually is that infants don't have desires in the same way that blades of grass don't have desires, and trees don't have desires. And the way that we can prove that these things don't have desires is because they don't have language, or at least it appears to us that they lack language. Maybe you could make an argument that trees do have language, or that babies do have language, or infants. He's saying that they don't. And for this reason, they don't have beliefs, and for this reason they don't have desires, and for this reason there's no kind of morality that we can build, there's no moral structure that we can build around them, because a moral structure requires both desires and beliefs. Yeah. Georgia's not happy with this one. I'm sorry, Giorgia. I'm sorry. The last philosopher that we have here is Carl Cohen, and he's a philosopher professor of philosophy at the University of Michigan. And he says that rights holders must be able to distinguish between their own interests and what is right. So he says, if you look at a wolf, say, that goes out and it kills another animal, well, clearly the wolf is not debating whether or not it's right to kill another animal. So we should not be giving rights to the wolf if the wolf is unable to make this moral judgment himself. Does everybody get that one? Any questions about that argument? Yeah. Yeah. And I think that as human beings, we actually kind of do this with one another. We say that we give a certain amount of rights to human beings unless you commit a felony. Then you're not allowed to be free. You're stuck in a prison. Then you're not allowed to vote. Maybe you're not, because you're stuck in a prison, you're not able to have children, right? We take away the rights of people who are unable to act in a way that is right or wrong, just like he's saying with these animals, that cows are unable to make decisions about right and wrong, as are chickens. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we got there. Richard Posner. So Judge Richard Posner, not a philosopher, but he's a judge at the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, and he had a pretty popular debate with Peter Singer. Did anybody catch this debate online? It was about 3 years ago. No. Okay. So he said that humans prefer their own. So humans prefer humans. But he also said that humans say that dog death is worse than infant pain. Maybe we can take a little poll from the audience here. if you had to choose between seeing a dog die or seeing a human child experience an unbelievable amount of physical pain for, say, a whole hour, right? Having an infant's hand be burned on a fire or see a dog die, who would think that you would rather see you'd rather see the dog die? Would rather see the dog die. Okay. And who would rather see the infant be burned? Okay, so the infant burns are definitely in the minority here. I'd say about a third of those people. Okay. Wild. Okay. Yeah, please.
Suppose the infant pain was not the result of overt cruelty. Would that make a difference? I mean, putting an infant's hand in a fire is different than saying this kid's got an illness and it's going to hurt like hell for an hour. Well, you know, I've had teething children.
Right. So you're saying that when making some kind of moral argument, intention really plays key here.
Well, yeah, I mean, nobody wants to see an infant tortured.
If it accidentally falls into a fire and stays there for an hour. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not your son. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Good. Okay, so when we get into small groups in a little bit, maybe if we do, I don't have a question really prepared for this in particular, but if you wanna rope back around to this argument, it seems like this is getting people pretty excited. That's really good to know. Okay, cool. So just a few of the common arguments, and I want to hear from you guys about what you think that I'm sure that I left off of this list against veganism. So first of all, a lot of carnivores say that you have to draw this arbitrary line. Where do you draw the line? Do you kill flies? Do you kill mosquitoes? Do you kill dogs? Where do you say that something deserves to live, deserves to not experience suffering, and where do you say that it's actually allowed? And it seems like for a lot of carnivores, they say that vegans choose a relatively arbitrary line. The second one, they say consuming meat is ancient and natural. We heard from this a little bit, that it's a part of our culture, and that we'd be ostracized from our community if all of a sudden we chose not to eat meat. And how can there be something morally wrong with something that we've been doing for so long? Like slavery. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So animal husbandry, they say, is good for animals, very similar to the philosopher that we saw here, that the animal actually gets better health care, is able to survive and procreate because it is under the care and supervision of humans. One that's very often said is that animals lack consciousness, intelligence, feelings, and souls. And for this reason, we don't need to be too concerned about their experiencing suffering or experiencing death, because they won't feel the pain and they don't have souls that are actually going to die. In the way that there's something inside of me that's looking out my eyes, something inside of me that's feeling the sensation of my fingers scratching my skin, and that there's something inside of you looking out your eyes, that thing inside just doesn't exist in animals, these people are arguing. There's nothing inside. They're more just like these kind of robots, these automatons. The fifth is that there's intense animal overpopulation, and that we need to eat animals in order to curb animal overpopulation. A lot of people also say that veganism is far too expensive. I think it's really interesting to explore why veganism is perceived as being such an expensive choice. A lot of people say that veganism is unhealthy as well. A lot of men looking at testosterone, let's say, as being lacking from a vegan diet, or saying that iron is deficient in a vegan diet, right? Or protein, I think, is really often said. Oh, and B12. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna go back to this last slide. Is there anything that people would like to add to this list, or any thoughts on this one? Yeah, I'll go to Adine.
This is a bit more specific, and it's for the U.S. at least, but hunters provide more revenue for conservation of habitats and animal species and more personal active stewardship than any other group.
Great. Yeah, it's a great point. Thank you, Adine. Anybody else? Maybe somebody that we haven't heard of so far. Yeah, please.
I've had it from some family members just saying it's too extreme. Like, I was a vegetarian before and then I became vegan, and they were like, it's just too extreme, like, why are you doing it? And they still have in their brain that it's like it's unhealthy as well, even though since I've become vegan they're all telling me like how healthy I look and that I'm doing really well. Like, I've had so many comments saying that, but people still have it like in their mind. It's like a subconscious thing, like, but it's still unhealthy.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Somebody new? Yeah, please. Yeah. What is your name, sir? Steve. Yeah, please, Steve.
I think there's something unhealthy about any ism. And so it's the ism that I would have some objection to. I think it creates separation in the world and creates othering and us and them. And that's as big a problem as the eating of the meat.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Beautiful point there. Beautiful point. Show of hands from anybody who agrees with Steve on that one. Yeah, lots. Yeah, on the isms. Yeah, on the negative characteristics of the isms. Good. Maybe we'll hear from one more person. Yeah, maybe we'll go to Alex and we'll close it off. Good.
Yeah, I think it's one that hasn't been mentioned, but like resonates with everyone a little bit. It's just fucking bothersome being vegan. It's more. It's just takes more time, takes more thought. You have to cook for yourself, like make yourself dinners and look for specific restaurants, and it just takes a lot of work, and some people just don't care.
Yeah, wow, awesome. Yeah, thank you. And I think to kind of top off this list, let's say, is just apathy. Is just people not caring. It doesn't really matter any of the environmental points or the health points or the compassion points. If somebody just doesn't care, there's almost nothing that you can say to them that's going to convince them to become a vegetarian or a vegan or an animal lover in any way. Yeah, please.
I think just going on from that is that people find veganism annoying. That's what I find with most of my friends would be like, it's just people who are talking about it all the time is annoying, and the immediate thing would be,
No, I just wanted to end, just to add up that people who, at least I know, who are vegans, they kind of trying to convert you into that, which is like quite weird to me, because everybody has their own system of beliefs, and you don't have to make other people feel bad because of their own system of beliefs, right? So yeah, I feel like because now it's a big trend, that's why it's a little bit like it's taken way too, not even seriously, but like I'd say, well, I don't even know what word to say with that, but yeah.
All right, great, awesome, guys. Thank you. So Brian Cateman, we talked about him just a little bit earlier, and he started what's called the Utilitarian movement. That I'm sorry for repeating myself here, but I think it's actually really important to note. So if anybody here has ever tried to convert any vegans or vegetarians that have tried to convert a family member, has anybody found success by demonizing your family and demonizing your friends? Or do you find that actually jogging alongside them a little bit and saying you're not wrong and allowing for a kind of gradual change from meat eating to veganism is a bit more effective effective approach of converting people? Brian Cateman, he believes that hardline veganism is actually really bad for animals, that more animals are harmed because vegans make it very difficult to gradually switch from being a meat eater to just reducing the amount of meat that you consume. Can everybody in the room agree that we want to reduce suffering in the world? Does anybody disagree with that? Nobody disagrees. I asked 2 questions. I'm sorry. Could I get a show of hands? Does everybody agree that we want to reduce suffering in the world? Yeah, okay, awesome. And do we think that at least in some way, the meat industry, especially in the way that it exists today, is propagating suffering in the world? Do we agree with that one at least? Right. So do we think that at least reducing our meat intake in some way is probably a better thing to do? Yeah, we agree. Okay, amazing, awesome, thank you. So it seems like that's a pretty easy one to get behind, and that's what Brian Cateman is trying to say. I met Brian Cateman at in Washington, D.C. at the Animal Rights Conference, which is one of the largest vegan conferences in the world, and he said that he's actually really concerned about being found out that he was at this conference because he doesn't want his followers to know that he is a vegan, because if they find out that he's a vegan, he loses all of his credibility. For that reason, though, when he was speaking at the Animal Rights Conference, in this conference full of animal rights activists, he was being petitioned. There were people that showed up with posters and signs that were booing him, people that were trying to get him kicked out of the whole conference, saying there's no reason why Brian Cateman should be at a conference about animal rights, because he's telling people that it's okay to eat at least some meat. All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the environmental impacts of the meat industry. But before I do, I'd like to actually break for a small group discussion here. So I'm just gonna scroll through quickly and grab one here. So what I think that we can talk about is exactly how is it that killing a human is different than killing a non-human animal. And what I'm asking for in this question is exactly what part of being a human being is not found in a non-human animal that makes it okay to kill a non-human animal. Okay? Any questions about the question? We're all good. Okay, let's take about 10 minutes, maybe 15, and then we'll all come back. Awesome, guys. Thank you. Bum ba bum ba 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 da ba da ba da ba ba ba. Okay, hello and welcome back, everybody. Nice to see ya. Nice to see ya. If you guys want to come back in, we're gonna start back again. What we're gonna do right now, we're going to start with the. We're gonna get into the haiku and drawing contest, which I think is gonna be pretty cool. So thank you so very much to everybody who participated, and thank you to Truett. Truett, come on up here, man. Round of applause for Truett. Thank you very much for organizing this for us, bro. Thank you very much. So we got a lot of different submissions, a lot of really cool stuff, and we whittled them down to 3 in each category. And we're gonna need your help to decide which one of these 3 wins. Okay? So coming up first, we have the drawings. So this is drawing number 1. There is some text. It says discrimination, hate, discrimination, do animals, slaves, confine, consume, free, befriend, love. This is not a haiku, so we couldn't keep it in that part of the round, but certainly the drawing is pretty lovely. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2. There was also a haiku associated with this one, but we wanted to put it in the drawing contest. The haiku says, "We are all naked, nude to the world, sacred still. Their life is my life." Number 3. It says, "One of the reasons I love animals, some of them are stupendously weird looking, and that's kind of beautiful." Wow, I think this is a sugar glider here. It's a what? It's an eye. What are all the rest of? Did you do these, Bex? This is so good. Oh, I'm not supposed to know. Never mind. I'm so sorry. Oh no. What am I gonna do now? I messed up, guys. All right, well, let's see if we can get your help real quick. So we have these 3. What I need from you is a round of applause. Can we all just practice rounding applause real quick, please? Ready? Go! Yeah, we all have hands. We can do this. Awesome. Good. Okay, so of those 3, round of applause for number 1, please, entitled Woman with Dog. Very nice. For number 2, Woman with Monkey and Cat. Great. And for number 3, this is not biased. This is pretty clear. Bex, you are the winner. Very nice work. Thank you to everybody for participating in the drawing. Say it again. Please, yeah.
Okay, point out which one's which. Okay, so this one is a star-nosed mole. This is an emu. This is anteater, blobfish, and aye.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So you can order whatever you want, and it's on me, okay? Cool. Thank you, Bex. Thank you, Bex. And now for the haikus. We start with this. I love animals. Also, they are delicious. I am conflicted. Number 2. You cute and cuddly. Get in my stomach. Love me. Yes. Me so hangry. Me so angry. Number 3. Also would have loved to have entered this in the drawing, but I thought the haiku was so lovely. Souls lie in the eyes. Why destroy Mother Nature's? Let's be kind to all. All right, so can I hear a round of applause for number 1, please? For number 2. And for number 3. Number 1. Number 1, Adine is the winner! Very nice. Thank you, Adine. Beautiful, beautiful. We disqualified Adine last time because he's a really good poet, but then we realized that's unfair. Nice work, Adine. Nice work, Adine. Very nice. And thank you so much to everybody who participated today. So guys, you might know that the Hanoi Philosophy Forum is linking up with the Hanoi Zine Library. It's not going to take very much time, but I wanted to give just a second to Bex, if you could come on up here. No, it's all good. I'll hand the microphone over for you to just let us know what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. Yeah.
Hi, I swear I'm not trying to steal attention. That was just coincidental that the drawing then. So I'm part of Hanoi Zine Library, but I've also been working on another project. It's called Made in Vietnam Zine, and it's not relevant to veganism, but John gave me the opportunity to come up tonight to talk about it. We made an issue back in June, and this is our second issue. And basically the zine is, to add on, we mentioned last week, but a zine is a self-published magazine where it can take any format really, and this one is an art book. It's with images from artists from both Hanoi and Saigon. And we take submissions, so if you follow us on Facebook, we'll be looking for people for the next issue as well. But so I've made all these by hand. I've done the printing and the sewing, and we found a really amazing local printer in Printopia. And I've got a couple of copies with me tonight of both this issue and the first issue, if anyone's interested to come over and have a look and ask some questions. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Bex. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. So it happens literally every single week that I prepare way too much content. I think that what I've been doing so far has been a kind of prelude for the rest of the conversation, but it's a little past 10 o'clock now. So the event is supposed to formally end at 10. I'd love your permission to maybe go until about 10:20 or 10:30. How does everybody feel about that? Is that okay? Is that cool? We can do it a little bit more? Cool. So what we're going to do, we'll have a little talk on the environmental impact of the meat industry, on the health impact, and then I'm also going to bring up Otto, who has prepared some poetry for us today, and also Ha has made some samplings of some vegan food for us that she wanted to share. I didn't ask her to, she just wanted to do that for us tonight, so I'm excited to get those out to you. So that's what we have for the next 20-25 minutes. We'll have one more discussion after that, and then we're going to call it a night. Puku, though, is open 24 hours. So normally there's a group that stays here until 3 or 4 or 5 a.m. every week. So if you haven't gotten enough of the conversation, please do stick around after this. But with all that said, let's move on into some of the environmental impacts of the meat industry. So first of all, we'll talk about global warming a little bit. So first, according to World Watch, animal agriculture is responsible for more CO2 production than the entire transportation industry. So that's cars, motorbikes, planes, boats, all of those combined. The animal agriculture industry is responsible for more CO2 production than all of them. Also, factory farming is responsible for 65% of all human-related emissions of nitrous oxide. Now, nitrous oxide is like so much more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2 is. Going vegan, this is according to Peter Scarborough, who is he wrote an article, I think it was associated with the WHO, I could be getting this wrong actually, but he calculated that going vegan cuts your carbon footprint roughly in half. And there are many articles that are going around right now that are saying that there's literally nothing that you can do on a personal level that is more beneficial for the environment than just going vegan and stop eating meat and stop eating dairy. So this comes from Peter Scarborough's paper. He said, less meat, fewer emissions. So this is calculated in pounds of carbon dioxide per day. So a heavy meat eater, he calculated, produces just about 16 pounds of carbon dioxide every day. And you see all the way down the list, medium meat eaters, low meat eaters, pescatarians, vegetarians, bottom the list, vegans. So, I mean, to me, it looks like it's almost a third, actually, of the CO2 output per day from vegans as compared to heavy meat eaters. And I know that many of us have been seeing the articles recently about what the next 12 years or 20 years or 30 years of the world is going to look like because of the catastrophes caused by global warming. Now, agriculture is also responsible for 80 to 90% of the water that's consumed in the United States. Now, I'm sorry that many of these statistics do come from the United States. There is not a comparable statistics gathering agency in Vietnam. I'd love to get some local statistics, but we can at least presume that they're relatively similar. Okay? Growing feed crops, livestock, consumes 56% of water again, in the United States. So of all the water that's consumed, more than half of it just goes into growing crops for livestock. There's a conversion that you can follow, and this has been done by several different agencies, actually. They found that for every pound of beef, more than 2,500 gallons of water is needed to produce 1 pound of beef. So, of course, a cow is alive for years and years and years. And the whole time that the cow is alive, it's drinking water, it's eating food. And all of that water and all of that food could go to other people that need the water or that need the food in a bit more of an efficient way. For 1 gallon of milk, it was calculated that about 1,000 gallons of water are needed to produce 1 gallon of milk. And about 900 gallons of water are needed for every pound of cheese. 477 gallons of water are needed for 1 pound of eggs. It was found that in the United States, 5% of water was consumed by private homes, while 55% was consumed by agriculture. Livestock for feed occupies livestock or feed for livestock occupies 33 to 45% of the Earth's ice-free land. 2.5 acres of land, it's been calculated, is required per cow. And this is one argument why organic, grass-fed, free-range beef is actually worse for the environment and perhaps worse for global warming than factory farmed beef. So what we're running up against here is when the world is running out of land, we're finding ways to continue to expand the human footprint. So we're cutting down more trees to make room for more human beings. We'll get into that a little bit more. So if one person who's a vegan requires about 1/6 of an acre per year to produce all of the food that they would need per year. Now, of course, this is done with very efficient agricultural models, but this is definitely possible, right? 1/6 of an acre for a vegan. Now, it's been calculated that a vegetarian requires about half of an acre because the crops that are required for the cow to produce the milk that goes into the dairy, or for the chickens that produce the eggs, that all requires so much more land. Okay, now for an omnivore, they on average require, it's been calculated, about 3 acres of land. I know that I'm speeding through these a little quick, but we just got a lot of things. So are there any questions about any of the last 2 slides, actually, before moving forward? Yeah, please.
Sorry again, my questions are actually points. Actually, the choice you can make to have decrease your CO2 is actually not to decrease, but not to have a high CO2 impact on current sustainability research shows that is not to have children. So that's kind of number one, and number two is meat. And then also on the CO2, I'm a sustainability scientist, so that's why I'm a bit like... yeah, and also the CO2 emissions on... yeah, so if you are a person who only eats white meat, but not dairy, it has less of a CO2 impact than a vegetarian. So it's like this, the graph with the high impact or like heavy meat eating. It's actually depending on the size of the animal. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So when we look at our ocean, there have been several of these calculations that all give a relatively similar time estimate. So they say that roughly by the year 2048, that number comes from National Geographic, that if we continue fishing at the same rate that we're fishing today, we will have fishless oceans by the year 2048. So there's no governmental agency that's responsible for overseeing words like sustainable fishing as opposed to just fishing. And it turns out that this is a word that really any fishing agency can slap onto the side of their name so that people will pay more money for their fish. But there's really no such thing that's going on today outside of fishing farms that could be considered sustainable fishing. For every pound of fish, it's been estimated by the FAO, which is the UN's Facts of Agricultural, I think it's Facts of Agriculture, Food and Agricultural Organization. Yeah, thank you, of the UN. So they calculated for every pound of fish that's produced, that's caught, about 5 pounds of bykill are also caught. So bykill includes things like sharks, seals, dolphins, turtles that are caught in the nets while trying to catch fish. And once these turtles and dolphins end up on these ships, they don't just throw them back in the water. They oftentimes they'll just kill them, or because they now have them, there might be special laws about what they can do with it if it's accidentally caught as opposed to being caught on purpose. So 5 times the amount of bykill then is what's intentionally being caught. But 650,000 whales, dolphins, and seals are killed every year as bykill. That's according to Oceania. Sharks, according to the National Geographic, sharks kill 12 people a year, while people kill 11,414 sharks every hour. All right. So this is one that I think a lot of people don't know about the meat industry, but we're all familiar with the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest, right? Going on right now, yeah, and how. So in the Amazon, there's 1 to 2 acres of rainforest that are cleared every single second. 2 acres, 2 acres, 2 acres, 2 acres, 2 acres. And the leading cause, again, this is according to the FAO, the leading cause of global rainforest deforestation is livestock and the crops that are being fed to the livestock. So trees aren't making money for anyone who's living in the Amazon rainforest. But if they cut down the trees and they begin to raise crops for cattle, or they begin to raise cattle, now they can start making money. So a lot of the indigenous peoples who are living in the Amazon, they're choosing to become farmers because they make more money this way. It was calculated that 91% of Amazonian deforestation is caused by animal agriculture. And that on average, 137 plant, animal, and insect species are lost every day due to rainforest destruction. Do you mean they go extinct? They go extinct. 137. So what responsibility do you guys feel that we have to keep our skies clean, to keep our oceans clean, and to keep our rainforests intact? Do you think that we need to, that knowing these things, do we need to change the way, even if it's not by going vegan, maybe driving our motorcycles less or something, do you think that we have a responsibility to do something to lower our effect on the skies, on the oceans, and on the rainforests? Anybody? Yeah, Aaron, please.
Well, yeah, I do think that we have individual responsibility to change our daily habits. Like, use less water when you're showering. Don't drive your motorbike. If you have a bicycle, you could use. Those things are important just to keep your presence of mind there. But I feel like the biggest responsibility would be to pressure politicians to actually make these things happen, because it can happen overnight if politicians were involved. But, me deciding to turn the lights off when I leave the room isn't going to make a huge impact in the long run, I think.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, please.
I just want to say something, like, as you bring up the politicians, I think one of the main thing about the vegan movement right now is kind of like it's the only big social movement that we can use to actually make an impact, and it's in our hand, because it's like how the market work, like demand and like when you are supporting the consumption, the demand go up and then they will produce more. But then it's like it's actually in your hand that you can use it. Like if you think about feminism or environmentalism, everything require what you say, like the politicians to just like come up and change the law. But actually, if we go vegan, we don't need politicians. We just like create our own impact directly in the market. So
that's the beauty of it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I see a lot of hands. Because I don't want the things to get cold, she stayed up until about 4:30 last night cooking some cauliflower-based hot wings for us tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we'll have these circulating around for the next little while.
Give it to the meat eaters first.
That's actually a good point. Yeah. Alrighty, guys. So as we're munching away, I'll just throw a few more thoughts at you. First, about animal welfare. I'm sorry, it was not timed very well. Yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to put out a fact out there that since 1988, the carbon emissions since 1988, 71% of those emissions, 100 companies are responsible for. 100.
Golden. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm not sure if you've seen the tweet going around. CNN had a tweet that said, "Scared by the new report on climate change, here's what you can do. Eat less meat, swap your car or plane ride for a bus or train, and use thermostat." And somebody actually responded to that by saying that a reminder that 100 corporations are responsible for 71%. And that there's a moral failing on the part of the individuals for not noting that, and that it's journalistic malpractice. And I agreed with that. But I also feel like this kind of, I don't know who said it, one of you guys, kind of shifting the blame when actually on any individual basis you can make a difference. Just because 100 corporations are responsible, it doesn't mean you can then just like flick your cigarette butt into the ocean.
Yeah, it's calculated that roughly every day, by choosing to not eat meat, a vegan saves the life of one animal every day. That's a rough estimation. And that doesn't require corporations, that doesn't require politicians, that's just immediate effect. Oh man, we're losing time. Aaron, what do you, okay, yeah, sorry man. Yeah, maybe if we can. I want to hear from Mahatma Gandhi first, actually, if that's okay. So Mahatma Gandhi says, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated." Also, Charles Darwin says, The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. Okay. So, I think I could talk about this for hours, actually, the way that animals are treated in factory farms, and especially because we have food going around, because we're drinking, because this is a fun event. I'm not going to go nearly as deeply into this as we could, but just a few kind of baseline things. So, 56 billion, with a B, farm animals are killed every year. You can break that down to 153 million farm animals every day. Or about 1,776 animals every second. Yeah, and Killian, you're right, this does not include fish. So, on top of this, somewhere, and the estimates are really unclear here, but somewhere between 1 and 4 trillion fish are killed every year. So according to Counting Animals, 26.2% of United States retail meat is discarded by stores and consumers. So all of this animal death, about a quarter of it is just wasted, is just discarded. That works out to something like 14 billion animals are just thrown away every year, just discarded. All of these slides will be available online. I see some cell phones coming out, so if you want to grab any of these later on, I'll post it onto the Hanoi Philosophy Forum group page. So if we look at cows in particular, I think that the image that we have of cows on farms is quite different than the image of cows in reality. So dairy cows have been modified to produce up to 10 times more milk than they would naturally. Right, and this means that their udders, I don't know if you've seen pictures of this, but their udders increase massively in size. They get these tears on the sides of their udders because they're so much larger than they're meant to be. Because of these tears, these pustules begin to develop. And then the pus begins to seep out of these pustules and into the milk. And in the United States, our FDA has an amount of pus that is legally allowed to be in your milk. Maybe not your milk, but my milk. So when a male calf is born in the dairy industry, it's not suitable for beef production, and of course it can't create dairy. So cows that are produced for beef are genetically modified in a way that's different than cows that are produced for dairy. So a dairy male, the son of a dairy cow, would not be fit for production for meat consumption. So they're often just discarded. They're just killed. One thing that really pushed me over to being a vegan was when learning about, and I'm sorry for this, I know it's a triggering word, but the industry standard term here is the rape rack. I'm not sure if you've heard of this before. It seems intuitive, actually, but maybe we don't think enough about the fact that milk production only comes about after a female is pregnant, which means that for a dairy cow to produce milk, the cow must be impregnated. The cow, the dairy cow, the female, does not choose who her partner is. She doesn't even have sex with another cow most of the time, but she's artificially inseminated via a machine. So this machine inserts a rod into the back of her to impregnate her so that she will continue producing milk. And she goes through this experience once every year. So the idea, I'm starting to get emotional, I'm sorry. The idea that a vegetarian diet does not produce animal suffering or does not produce the death of an animal is just false. 90,000 male dairy calves are shot soon after birth and discarded as byproduct. The average lifespan of a domesticated cow, a cow that's not used for dairy, that's not used for beef, is 20 years, but the average lifespan of his dairy cow is 5 to 6 years. In the UK, 30% of the dairy cows have mastitis, which is a bacterial infection in the udders, again produced from this intense overproduction of the milk. If we move on to chickens, battery-caged egg-laying hens spend their entire lives in cages 8 inches by 10 inches, that's 20 by 25 centimeters, so they're unable to spread their wings. Many of them never see any light during the day. Many of them never see any light in their whole lifetime. 825,000 chickens, this was calculated by the USDA, this is just in the United States, are accidentally boiled and drowned alive during slaughter every year. So there are laws against boiling chickens alive, but of course, many of them accidentally slip through. A breeding pig spends most of its adult life in gestation, which by 6.5 feet or 60 centimeters by 2 meters. A third of the pigs in the UK are killed in gas chambers. I'd like to talk about the humanitarian component of this, and then I'd like to hear from Otto, and then we're going to go. On a humanitarian level, we're growing enough food right now to feed more than 10 billion people. So if we remember that conversion of water, I didn't show these numbers, but maybe they're coming up actually, yeah. So 1 calorie of beef requires 33 calories of feed to produce. So because a cow is alive for so long and it's eating this whole time, if we were to feed this food directly to humans, we would have 33 times the amount of calories as we currently have when we're just eating beef. 1 calorie of dairy or of eggs takes approximately 6 calories of feed to produce. We looked at the acreage comparisons before. 1.5 acres produces about 37,000 pounds of plant-based food, whereas 1.5 acres produces about 375 pounds of beef, so about 100th of the food output. So when looking at world hunger, there are many vegans who say that if the world were to go vegan today, we could end world hunger tomorrow. We're already producing enough food, but the meat industry is so tremendously inefficient. Right now, at least 50% of grain in the world is fed to livestock. 15 times more protein can be grown on any given area of land with plants rather than cows. With all that being said, I would like to bring up Otto, who would like to read a poem for us, and then we're going to call it a night. Come on up, Otto. 1 round of applause for Otto, please. Thank you very much.
It can be if you want it to be, man. Yeah. This poem is called Sentient, and I'm going to be the devil's avocado. Some of the most unkind people I've met were vegans, judging me upon my decisions. Look, I have poor nutrition and a lack of ambition. Feed me a snake or a steak or a frog or a dog. I know it's an animal. And look, I'm not saying that there's nothing morally wrong. I am strong. And when I eat a double cheese, I know the cow is gone. I perceive if you can see what your actions make, you can be free from the stakes. There's no need to stand behind an ideology. The amount of times I've had this argument, I've been forced to make an apology from herds of sheep hiding in a theology. When I was 6, I used to get bullied from my school librarian. She also did the recycling. Told my mother not to give us tuna cans and projected a higher dominant stance over children. We couldn't afford organic horseradish, mung beans, carrots and cabbage. We lived within our own means and habits. There is nothing wrong with fighting for your beliefs, but how much of it is an identity crisis and a stance of righteousness? I understand this argument is weak, or could be perceived that way, but what if trees, plants, vegetables, fruits and all organisms contain some sentient life? And
and its dog eat God in the circle of death and the cycle of light. There was a test done by a man named Cleve Baxter, a man who invented a way to read polygraphs, aka lie detectors. On February the 2nd, 1966, in a late-night spur of consciousness, he noticed a Draconia fragrans, a houseplant, in his office, and thus hooked the plan up to the lie detector machine. In a polygraph, when you are worried about being caught in a lie, the levels will dip or spike. He decided to set one of its leaves alight. The polygraph reacted with an intense reaction before the match was even striked. The plant demonstrated the possibility of fear for its life. Also the capacity to read a human's mind. So is it truly justified to place flora and fauna on a hierarchy of ethical consumption when the factors that interplay are infinite and both meat and vegetables cause harm in their production? Perhaps we should set our way and find our way with no need to convince others to live the same as us. We all die. Suffering is a part of life. How much of it is necessary? Thank you.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you all so very much for sticking around with us tonight. I know we went a little longer than expected. This is the Hanoi Philosophy Forum. We do this every single week. I do want to send out a special thank you to Nache, and Giorgia Moran is going to be playing some music for us as we leave. Thank you so much, guys, for making that music for us. Thank you. To Otto for reading his poetry, to Truitt for leading the haiku contest, to Ha for making the food. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Big thank you to Andrew and to whoever she is for taking some photos and some videos for us. To Killian, who's our audio engineer for tonight. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. I hope to see you all next week. We have a night. It's going to be a bit less, well, it's certainly going to be spicy. I just think that it's going to be a bit less sad than this one. So next week, we're going to be looking at drag performance. After that, on the occult. Week after that, open mic philosophy. On the 14th, one that I think if you are interested in this talk, you really should come to, called The End of the World, all about the UN report and recent findings and studies on what the next few years of environmental devastation might look like. We're going to have a talk on fetishes, then Jainism coming up after that. I love you all. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Have a wonderful night. Stay as long as you want. Bye-bye. Thank you, guys.